In this video, we're going to talk about how a project is different than a hands-on challenge. There are 3 key ideas every educator should know when they're thinking through how a project is different than a hands-on challenge. The first is to go through examples. I'm going to give you 4 examples of real-life classroom scenarios, and you tell me if it's a project or is it a hands-on challenge. The first one is learners are creating a tower out of spaghetti and small marshmallows, all so they can get their larger marshmallow to be the highest of anybody in the class. The second is high schoolers that have asked about vaping in the bathrooms. They said it's a real issue and how do we fix it? So they did some research and they're presenting to the school board different options for vape detectors. The third is a moon landing scenario. So in this scenario, you have 2 astronauts that need to get to the moon. They're represented by 2 marshmallows in a Dixie cup, and you have a plethora of resources. You've got straws, scissors, tape, string, paper, a whole bag of stuff, and everybody needs to create the best way to help these astronauts land on the moon. The fourth example is 3rd graders helping local military families relocate. So if someone's going to relocate to this area where these elementary school students are at, they can use their resources and their pamphlets to help relocate. They got this idea from Colonel Piper. So there's 4 different real-life classroom examples of engaging activities happening in a classroom. Which one's a project? Which one's a hands-on challenge? The project-based learning projects were the vape detectors, where the high schoolers came up with their own need, they did the research, and they presented to an authentic audience. The 4th one as well was a project-based learning unit. So in that case, there were military families that were relocating, and the learners said, well, what do we do about this? So, well, let's call Colonel Piper. She comes in and launches this idea, and they create a whole bunch of neat resources that are used by people moving into the area. The spaghetti tower and the marshmallows is a hands-on challenge. It's an engaging one. I've used it with adults and with kids, and it gets people collaborating, it gets people talking, it gets people using teamwork. It typically takes about 30 minutes. The 3rd one in there is also a hands-on challenge, and in that one you're doing a moon landing, which I've also done with adults and kids. It's super fun. We start creating all kinds of like shock absorbers. We create some parachutes that come out to get the marshmallows down. Again, probably takes about 30 minutes to do, but you get a lot of collaboration, a lot of teamwork that happens throughout the hands-on challenge. So the second idea that educators need to take into mind when figuring out if it's a project or a hands-on challenge are the similarities between the two. There are a lot, right? So when you're doing a hands-on challenge, you're working with your hands, obviously. So learners are up, moving, they're collaborating, they're thinking critically, they're trying to solve some kind of a problem. In project-based learning, we're doing the same things. We're trying to collaborate, we're looking to think critically, we're problem solving, we're creating some kind of a solution. The 3rd idea that educators need to take into account when figuring out if it's a project or a hands-on challenge is the differences between the two. So some of the differences are that in project-based learning, you're going very deep into a subject area. You've got power standards that you're addressing. You have community partners that are involved. It's likely so the depth creates length as well. So it's not a 30-minute activity. This might be 4 to 6 weeks. Might be a 4 to 6 week unit. Whereas a hands-on challenge is typically you've done some kind of a lecture, some kind of teaching, and now you want the kids to manipulate something so that they can increase their learning, which is a great idea. Another difference between the two is that in project-based learning, you're solving a real-world problem. This is probably the biggest difference between the two. It's probably why PBL is more of an instructional model than an activity, because that's where the engagement comes from, the real-world aspect. So if you're looking at PBL and a project, it means that you are involved in solving a real-world problem. In a hands-on challenge, it might be more of an activity where there's a scenario where it's 30 minutes, so you might not have time to wrap around a full real-world problem. So, what's the metaphor for this? I like to use dinner and ice cream. Like, it's okay to have ice cream in your dinner, but it's not okay to have ice cream for dinner every single night. So, dinner has a whole bunch, maybe it's meat and potatoes, right? There's meat and potatoes throughout. You've got a vegetable, you've got a fruit. It's filling, and you can still have ice cream in there. Now, if you have a hands-on challenge, that's probably more the ice cream portion of things, right? You can absolutely do hands-on challenges. Highly recommend it. Like I said, I use it for adults. It's a great activity, maybe as part of a workshop, but it's not going to be an instructional model, right? So hands-on learning, I would say, fits into project-based learning as a tool in your tool bag. So I've just given you 3 ideas as to how a project is different than hands-on learning. As you look at the scope of your classroom, introducing hands-on learning is a great way to bring a lecture or some standards-based work into a place where learners can start to manipulate and work through things. It's probably going to be more of an activity. When you go project-based learning, now you're looking at your instructional model, a larger pedagogical shift. You probably need some resources and training around that, which is what we do at Magnify Learning. So we love project-based learning. We like hands-on challenges too. Like, there's hands-on work happening in PBL, so they definitely work together. They're not polar opposites, but there's definitely some differences. I hope this video has helped you figure out those differences so you can use them in your classroom.